Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. I hope that everyone is enjoying the holidays. This is going to be the last EVE Talk for 2018, of course. Another full year of one EVE Talk every week. I hope that I can continue this effort next year as well, because it's definitely a lot of fun and I'm actually getting some nice information out of it myself as well. I am doing some small trades here and there. Perhaps we'll try to ramp up the activity in trading next year as well. For now, I do have another goal set in EVE Online for early next year. Not sure how long it's going to take me, but more on that later. And of course, when it comes to the development of EVE Online at the moment, everything is a little bit slow. Local is still out, and of course CCP is probably enjoying the holidays as well. So let's just jump straight into the New Eden store here. Take a look at what's happening here. Not a lot. We still have all of the fireworks, of course. If you want to fire those off when it's actually New Year, you can still grab them. Other than that, it's a lot of focus on the Triglavian ships with the Blackfire steel skins, and then down here you get the new Hadean horror skins for Triglavian ships as well, and then the Yaul festival skins are still up for grabs too. So nothing special, no sales in the New Eden store, but you do have some pretty cool Triglavian skins if that's what you want to fly. Takes a decent amount of effort, or at least amount of dedication I should say, to get those skills up and running, because I'm still training for the Leshak for the battleship at the moment, so that I can use Tech 2 weapons and all of that good stuff. But hopefully we get that done, and yeah, we get to finally try the Leshak out as well, because someone gifted one. It's still something I need to do. But we are here for the market, of course, so we'll just jump straight into some plex and stuff. It's going to be at 2 minutes 5 seconds. Like that, and let's get started. So for plex, you can see in Jita that we are hesitating a little bit. 3,350,000 discs, somewhere around there for the sellers. You can see that on the chart as well after reaching another high point. Well, it's a 1 year high, although you know that in the months here in December last year we did go higher than 3.4 million. Still, look at that, not a bad place to try and sell. And last week someone said in the comments that they're selling their plex like crazy, and they were absolutely right so far, because we have a little bit of a downtrend, bit of hesitation, and the chart is at around 3.3 million on average. So as I said in Jita, we're a bit above that, but if we go to the player on trade hubs, we can expect indeed sellers at a little bit less than 3.3 million. Buyers are coming in at 3,250,000 ISK, and it's pretty much the same in Jita or in the player on trade hub. So a bit of pressure on plex at the moment, quite interesting. The danger, well, it's still quite high at the moment, above 3.25 million on the chart, is pretty much above the entire chart, but that this is indeed the peak with the final sale from CCP, but that this is the peak here for plex, and that will start to slowly go down from now on, unless I think something major happens in 0.0, perhaps in January. I think that there's very high likelihood of that being the case. As I've said, it's a seasonal thing. The winter does bring back lots of players to take a look at the game, and that's that increase in price right here. After that, you usually get this slow down trend towards the summer, and I personally think that if CCP does do another unholy rage, another big ban wave for bots in the game, which, well, all we have so far is a tweet, but we know it's on their radar, then that should put even more pressure on the price of plex. So it's still, I think, a great time to sell. I wouldn't be buying extra plex as investment at this point. For the multiple pilot train certificates, going back up as well. Here it's a bit more visible that we are not at a 1 year high just yet. We are above 1.2 billion on average, but we've been above 1.3 billion early last year. Yeah, 250 million I should say for the sellers, and 1.2 billion pretty much for the buyers as well, but still going up at the moment in price. Plex is showing that might stop at any time though. For the skill extractors, same little dip down that we have in plex as well, going back down below 380 million on the chart, 370 million for the sellers. If you look at Jita prices, 379 million, very close to 380 still here. And then the buyers are coming in at 365 million ISK for skill extractor. So a little bit of hesitation here, and that's the real question. Do you think that we're talking about the peak price right here, mid-December, or is this just a little bit of a delay, perhaps because of some holiday actions that are not on the New Eden store? That's always possible as well, because we do see here increased volumes quite dramatically for Plex as well. You do see increased volumes, so perhaps there is like a sale happening somewhere else that is not as visible, and that could be the reason. Definitely put it down in the comments if you know about which sale is actually happening, if that's the case, because otherwise this is definitely a bit of a mood change in the market if this is not sale related. For the skill injectors next, let's start with the large skill injectors, and very interesting, continuing to increase in price on increased volumes. That is of course going to be the 13th gift from CCP that allows you to grab 3 of these large skill injectors and you grab all the skill points without any drawbacks, even for veteran players. That has brought the price up to 872 million ISK for the sellers in the player-owned trade hubs, 883 million in GTA itself, buyers coming in at 852. Very nice trade that we could have made here by late October, early November for around 700 million ISK, tried to sell now for 870. That was an awesome trade, and I think someone put in the comments that are we going to see large scale injections go for 1 billion ISK? I don't think that that's in the cards. I think that's a little bit too high. But yeah, above 850 is definitely something that we have reached, and so it's a great time to sell large scale injectors if you happen to have them. 1 year high point, pretty damn obvious. All-time high, I'm not exactly sure. I think we're coming from pretty high here as well, late last year in December, but at the moment definitely awesome time to sell. For the small skill injector next, get a bit of hesitation here, and then we're moving back up towards 180 million as well. 176 for the sellers, 179 in Jita, and 162 million, almost 163 in fact, for the buyers of small skill injectors. So that again here, early November, late October, could have bought these for around 140 million ISK, and now you're selling them for 175. Very nice trade that could have been made here. And as we said, the history behind this one, I thought that was very interesting. I kept being surprised with Plex going up here since August, and the skill injectors still being down to a plateau. And so the explanation that I got, and I think is right, is that we should have looked at the multiple pilot trade certificates that had been down several times to very low prices, giving the skill point farmers a margin to still sell at a profit despite these low prices. And so we have this nice delay between the canary in the coal mine, Plex prices going up, eventually driving up the prices for extractors as well, eventually driving up the price for the omega time for skill point farms as well, but you have this delayed response because of what was happening in the multiple pilot trade certificates, creating this very sharp increase in price in both small and large scale injectors. Last week the daily alpha injectors were at a 1 year low point, and we said, yep, that's looking like a sale because of these volumes, so definitely a great time to buy them. I think below 40 million was possible. Now they're selling for 44 million, buyers coming in at 40 million as well, so that bottom has obviously been reached. How long will it take for us to get back to 55, 60 million? Could take a while, of course. Volumes are up here quite substantially, and the averages at around quantity at around 500 a day. It's going to take some time to get through all of this, but you had a very pronounced, very obvious opportunity to grab some cheap daily alpha injectors as well, which, you know, they will pay off at some time. Next up, let's move on to our minerals at 920. like that. As always, we'll start with titanium. Bit more pressure on titanium. You can clearly see that on the chart, but the good news in my opinion is that we are still above 4.5 ISK on average. We can get back to a GTAF filter on this one. 454 for the sellers. Here the bad news: 1.7 billion, 1.6, 1.8, 2.1 billion. So everyone is trying to unload titanium whenever it goes up just a little bit, but we are holding on to more than 4.5 ISK on the sellers. Not a great price, but at least you can, you can feel like you're still making some sort of ISK out of your titanium. 442 for the buyers as well. That is a pretty narrow margin at the moment. Next up, we have pyrite. Ooh, that's actually going up in price all of a sudden after reaching a 1-year low point on the chart of around 3 ISK. Is now selling for 373. Buyers coming in at 356. So finally, a bit of a turnaround here in pyrite that reached a bottom after basically going straight down from 5 to 3 ISK in the last year. Great news for people that have been holding on to their pyrite and now absolutely want to unload. But bad news, I think this will not last very long. I think we'll see big supplies coming in because this is one of those side products that is just created too much in the game at the moment because of the mix of minerals, because of the way we are mining. And as a result, I fully expect the billions to start to roll in very quickly, driving the price back down. So if you want to sell pyrite, go as quickly as possible. Try to take advantage of this increase in price, which we haven't seen in a very long time. From 3 to 3.7 ISK. That is 20% increase, even more than that. I think you don't see that too often. No, I think that's wrong actually. 20%, yeah, it could be a fifth, pretty close to that. Next up, we have Mixalon that is staying pretty flat here in JITA. Currently selling for 57.68, buyers at 56 ISK. Again, very narrow margin, but we are at 1-year low points for Mixalon. I would not be selling at this point. I would be hoarding my Mixalon for better times. Next up here we've got Isogen. Very slow movement up away from 15 ISK. So here we also apparently have had our 1-year low point and our bottom 16.82 for the sellers, 16.24 for the buyers. And to my surprise, there's actually a low upswing here, so I would fully expect this to go back down at some point, but usually you have more of what you're seeing here with titanium, pretty violent upswing because someone decided to start investing in pyrite and then supply comes in to squash that increase in price. Here for Isogen, we've got this slow move up over course of a month to the current prices. That's a little bit strange to see it evolve like that, but I guess people are not willing to go, or the market is not willing to go to less than 15 ISK for Isogen. Then we have Noxium that is actually doing okay for the year here, staying at 300 ISK. Back down in the last couple of days, so we have to be careful. Sellers are down to 308 ISK, buyers at 293, and 31 million here, 12 million here. As long as Noxium can stay above 300 ISK, it's doing a really good job of that. I think it's still one of the minerals that we can focus now as well. Now that Mexalon has basically lost the plot here, it was doing so well, staying 70, 75 for most of the year. Was definitely the one to focus on if you were mining in high sec. But now you could definitely try to switch to Noxium as long as you can sell that for more than 300 ISK. After that, we have our Zydrine that is back up towards 500 ISK, trying to make that happen. 490 for the sellers, 460 for the buyers. So definitely up in price a little bit in the last month or so. And then we have Megasite that actually was still going up in the last week and is now plateauing at around 590 ISK on the chart. 607 in fact for the sellers. Sellers of Megasite above 600 ISK. That's been a while as well. 534 for the buyers. So we actually have a little bit of a comeback in some of the minerals. I find this very interesting that for pyrite, for instance, increased volumes. For Isogen, you do have some increased volumes, some spikes, but the price has hardly moved. Then for, what was it, Megasite, pretty obviously increased volumes as well. Same with Zydrine. Looks to me like people are taking positions at the end of the year here, and that some people are starting to invest in minerals in preparation for who knows what happens next year, right? If we get a big war in the winter, that could be a big payoff there. Or if CCP finally decides that, yep, they've had enough, it's time to do something about these ever decreasing mineral prices, then they might hit the or call it the nerve path, do something about the Nozick anomalies that endlessly respawn, perhaps some diminishing returns and things like that. There's lots of suggestions that the players have already made, and we sort of know from, I think if you watched the Imperium Twitch channel, I'm not sure what the exact name of the talking show is, but at one point they had CCP Fozzy on as well, and he said that, well, CCP is not really thrilled with the ever-decreasing mineral prices, and while nothing concrete was announced, it is on the radar for them to do something about that, and so from that perspective, these investments do make sense. Final mineral is Morphite, staying below 8,000 ISK on the chart here, selling for 8,000 ISK. Buyers coming in though at 7,457, so less than 7,500 ISK. Definitely, in my opinion, if I would be investing in minerals, it would be a couple of buy orders in Morphite here. Try to grab it as close as possible to 7,500. That's definitely pretty low, even historically speaking. It's a bit of a different mechanic and dynamic as well because of the Tech2 relation that Morphite has, and as a result, that would be my personal investment right there. Next up, we have our PI coming in at 1545. Like that. I don't think that there's gonna be too much news here. Oh, well, all of a sudden, look at that. Broadcast notes back up to the average of 2.1 million on, again, increased volumes. People seem to be taking positions, 2.3 million in fact for the sellers, 2 million for the buyers, back to, well, 2.3 right here, buyers here. That's about the average price for broadcast notes. So after a summer and a winter, an early winter at below average prices, we're back at the average price at the moment. Construction blocks looks like it is continuing to hover at a less than average price at the moment. 11,000 ISK for the sellers, 10,000 ISK for the buyers. I do have a personal story to tell about this one. As you guys know, I put up a buy order at less than 10,000 ISK, and look at that, it was 9,999 and it's gone. It actually triggered at some point in the last week. Someone sold these construction blocks and I bought some for less than 10,000 ISK. Now sellers at 11k. Too early, of course, for me to pull the trigger, but know that sometimes when the market gets very close to a certain price point, you can put up that buy order, and even if you get passed up by the markets, oops, we can actually extend that a little bit. Even if you get passed up by the market in the days after that, it can sometimes pay off to just leave your buy order for the longer term, and at some point it gets triggered and you grab it. So here on my ticker, we've got construction blocks 9999 and actually managed to grab those in the last week. Bit of a surprise considering the chart, but there you go. Or perhaps it could have been the week before that. I think I failed to actually check the orders there, and so perhaps one of these 2 days makes a lot of sense. Next up we have our consumer electronics. Same story here, not related to fuel, seems to be below average. So still selling for 13,650, buyers at 12,700, average chart 14k. So we are definitely still below average for consumer electronics, but on the in the last month or so, we do see an upswing in the works. Next up, we have coolants from fuels. So those went up to above 13,000 ISK on a couple of days. That's not very sustainable. Now selling for 12,500 and 11,300 for the buyers. Still a great price, well above average. Not a one-year high point anymore, but still a great time to sell coolants. Enriched uranium also reaching a one-year high point of 15k like about a week ago. Now has to give back some of that ground as well. 14,000 for the sellers, 13,000 for the buyers. Still again, fuel related, great price, one-year high points. For that reason, I keep being surprised if you look at the ticker right now. Nitrogen fuel blocks below 19,000 ISK. How the hell do you do that with the PI prices this high? It must be ICE products related. Those must be really low at the moment. Integrity response drones trying to get back towards 2.5 million ISK and doing so for the sellers. Buyers coming in at 2.4. So we are again back to average prices for this advanced PI material as well. Mechanical parts after reaching 12k also needs to take a bit of a break. Still 11,400 for the sellers and 10,400 for the buyers is a great price for mechanical parts as well. Nuclear reactors, so I managed to buy those pretty easily below 90,000 ISK. You could have probably bought these for like 82,000 as well. Bit of hesitation right now, but still selling for 101,000 ISK. Just a lack of buyers here, still below 84,000 ISK. That's actually, if you manage to buy here and sell here, you actually have a small trade. I'm waiting for better times, 110, something like that, would make for some nice profits for me. Organic mortar applicators, same story right here, back towards its average, almost 1.2 million for the sellers, 1.1 million for the buyers, perhaps even a touch above average for organic mortar applicators. The robotics are finally dropping off after trying to hold on to 100,000 ISK for another week. Last week, it's now going back to less than 95,000 ISK. First seller coming in, most at 98,000, 91,000 for the buyers. So for the robotics, this is also a PI material, but it is a bit different from the other fuel-related PI materials. This is a specialized one, so it takes one extra step to produce. And this one is now dipping to a less than average price. Still a very strong year for robotics. Compare that to coolants that needed to claw their way back up from 8,000 ISK to the current high points. For the robotics, we do have one that has performed around 100,000 ISK around average for most of the year. So I can't blame the market for taking a break here. Now, if we go low enough, let's say we start to see buyers at 90,000 ISK and less, that's when I think you should start to try to grab some of that cheap robotics. Self-harmonizing power cores, looking like it's still a little bit below average, but some data points try to bring it back to 2.1 million. And yep, a little bit below 2.1 for the sellers and 2 million ISK for the buyers. So the advanced PI materials seem to slowly move their way back to an average amount. I think it's still in line with my theory. People and myself included were investing in these advanced PI materials for the expansion this winter, expecting the new nullsec structures to really put up increase demand and bring that price to new highs. That didn't materialize, and as a result there was just too much stuff on the market, which meant that we needed a period of less than average prices for the market to actually go through that backlog of goods, and now we're slowly recovering from all of that. For the superconductors, back to an above average price, not bad. I'm actually making those, selling for 13,500 ISK, buyers at 12,700, back to an above average price here. Test cultures, after also doing really well in the last 2 months, managing some prices, some days with price at 10,000 ISK, has to give back some ground as well. 9,100 for the sellers, 8,500 for the buyers, still above average though. And then finally the wetware mainframes, same story here, right? You could put the average at around 2.4 million. Again, the spike that never really materialized for the expansion, too much supply, so we go back down and we start to hover at the 2.3 million instead of 2.4 million, but now 2.7 back to an above average price, 2.5 million for the sellers. Bit of a recovery here in the advanced PI materials. Next up, the advanced moon materials at 2250. Like that, and let's take a look at those. Most of them under pressure, but also not at 1 year low points last week, I think, so a pretty difficult time to make decisions. If you look at my ticker here down here as well, I've got some crystalline carbonite that I bought at 146 for instance, and that's it. So not feeling too like taking too many risks here. So crystalline carbonites definitely, at an, well, it's a difficult chart to say what the averages are because of the early year with quite a bit of volatility here, but at the moment we are definitely not at 1 year low points, and I wouldn't say that this is a great sell opportunity with sellers at 170, buyers at 160. For the Fernite carbide, we're continuing at a pretty damn low price, but you can clearly see that 150 is the bottom that gets tested from time to time. So we've got sellers at 158 and buyers at 152. I would prefer to see these buyers gone, try to grab it for less than 150, and then you've got like this short thing investment in Fernite carbide. After that, we have the titanium carbide. That same story right here in October, low point at 150. Bit of a recovery, but nothing too drastic where you'd say, all right, great, awesome sell opportunity. And now a bit of pressure at the tail end as well, but too early to buy. 184 for the sellers, 176 for the buyers. Tungsten carbide next. Again, here October, November, bit of a dip to 175. This does give us a clear pattern here where our bottoms are at, and now we move our way back up to 225, about an average price, so nothing too special. 220 for the sellers, 217 for the buyers. Another one that is too late for your buy opportunity, and in my opinion not high enough for an actual sale just yet. Then on the metamaterials, we have photonic metamaterials. Interesting dip, right? Right here, going to less than 17,500 ISK. 18,000 for the sellers, 17,800 for the buyers. So that's already recovered. We had a small buy opportunity here, maybe a week ago. I'm not sure if I actually spotted that one, where we could have bought these for, on average, 16,600. That is not bad. But keep in mind, 1 year low point is still at 15K right here. Next up, we've got the plasmonic metamaterials, same little dip and recovery already at 20,000 ISK, so 20,000 for the sellers, 19,600 for the buyers. Not enough volatility. I would wait for a more pronounced buy opportunity before I would make a move. Then we have the non-linear metamaterials, also going down in price, but again, look at the actual 1 year low point, 20,000 ISK should be possible. We're still selling for 24, buyers coming in at almost 24,000 ISK. That's a no, despite where the chart is at. I'm not going to invest in these just yet. Terahertz metamaterials, actually nice recovery, holding at 25,000 ISK, which did reach that bottom here in October at 20,000 ISK. Would have been a nice buy opportunity, but now again, it's a bit too late. 25,000 for the sellers, 24,000 for the buyers. And again, we'd love to see a breakout to like 30 for an actual sell opportunity, 20 to 30. Awesome trade, but at the moment that's not in the books just yet. If you actually bought here for less than 20,000 ISK, then you could consider taking that 25% profit and trying to sell at 25K at the moment. I'm looking for some more volatility and some wider trades than that personally. For the other advanced move materials, here is fermionic condensate, staying pretty low. At the moment, staying around 90,000 ISK, but again, same thing here. We went to 87. 1 year low point is actually 81,000 ISK, selling for 90, buyers at 88. Just not where we want to see it actually. Ferrogel next, after staying below 45,000 ISK for a little bit, is now recovering from that. 47,000 for the sellers, 46,000 for the buyers. So that again, same thing. Never felt like these were actually buy opportunities. Perhaps down here with that volatility we could have risked something, but see where we come from, still doesn't feel too good at the moment, and now definitely too late with that recovery in the last couple of days. Fullerenes. Fullerenes was nice, right? Go down to 900 ISK. That's definitely the bottom as well. Bit of recovery, same pattern again from October to December, and now a bit more pressure at the tail end. 1000 ISK for the sellers, 980 ISK for the buyers. That's again too early to call it a buy opportunity. Hypersynaptic fibers. That's a bit more interesting. We have to keep in mind that we went as low as 10,000 ISK early last year, but if you look at this chart, 12,000 for the sellers, less than 12,000 for the buyers. Try to get that to show up on the chart right here. That's definitely playing with another little bottom. And then the trade that we could have made here is buy for less than 12,000 ISK, sell for 14,000 ISK. It's not a great trade, but if you look at this entire chart here, this is a slight buy opportunity in the hypersynaptic fibers, in my opinion. The second one in 2 months' time. Might be worth it. Nanotransmitters, very flat as well. A less than average price for sure, but we can see that 4,500 and even 4K is possible. So selling at 5K and buyers at 4,900, that's again nope for me. Phenolic composites did go down very interestingly, not to the 2,000 ISK here, but less than 2,250. And now recovering at 2,500, buyers at almost 2,400. Same pattern, a bit delayed, and so here we had a buy opportunity perhaps 2 weeks ago or something like that. With that caveat again, if you look at the rest of the chart, 2000 ISK has actually been possible before. Ceramic fibers, that was a nice dip here to 400 ISK. I'm not sure the successful trades, I removed them at this point, but I think that's one of those that I did make. And then here we still have a little bit more volatility, but we are at the moment back at 500 ISK, a little bit less than average for the whole year. 525 for the sellers, 503 for the buyers, but definitely not a buy opportunity again. So at the moment, the good news I would say is that in quite a few of these, we are seeing some pressure coming in at the tail end here. So perhaps with enough supply and with enough stability in nullsec, we could be in for another buy opportunity. And that's, I think, what we need to keep in mind to look out for here in the advanced move materials. Try to spot those buy opportunities. And it was, let's see, nope, not this one either. Nope. Yeah, the hypersynaptic fibers here, that does show a very interesting chart if you are looking for that investment this week. But again, we are also quite dependent, I think, on nullsec to determine what is going to happen. And so I don't want to pull the trigger too early on these as well. Because if it stays calm there, I fully expect these downtrends to have more momentum, that we could see some real lows at some point. That's when I would want to grab them. And then same thing with like Tech 2, with the Morphite, hope for a conflict in nullsec, and that's when you'll have a great time selling, of course. And then perhaps, yeah, some of these guys in the mineral market might be right as well to start their investments there as well. So yeah, advanced move materials, very tricky to make any recommendations in at the moment, because everything is hovering in that recovered zone from those low points in October. Next up, we have our Tech 2 ships coming in at 30.50. Like that, and so a bit of recovery, but a bit of pressure at the tail end as well for the raw materials. So the Aries, for instance, is staying below 30 million ISK, where the bar is at 26 million. Below that, that's definitely below the entire chart. If you're looking for some cheap Aries, definitely grab that. It has interdiction, correct? Yeah, immune to interdiction sphere. So if you're looking for that travel scepter, right now you're grabbing Aries for less than 26 million. You definitely have a chance at some cheap ones. The Basilisk, ooh, that's a very sharp downtrend in the Basilisk. All of a sudden back to a 1-year low point. Where are the sellers at? 213 for the first seller, 211 for one buyer. Get rid of that, and we're talking 206 million for the buyers. Yeah, the Basilisk, quite a sharp downtrend, must be oversupplied all of a sudden. Look at that, 53.28. Yeah, no way that without fleet losses the market can absorb that. A buy opportunity in the Basilisk. But again, just as I've been saying with advanced move materials and with the minerals, you're dependent on something happening in nullsec for an actual great trade, I think. Still, this chart looks very enticing. You could try to grab a Basilisk. If it were me, I'm not sure if I'm gonna do it because I have some plans, as I've said, but I would like try 209 or something like that and hope that this one gets triggered, that you can actually grab that on the downtrend, and then you've got a Basilisk at less than 210 million ISK. That ought to be a great potential trade right there. Cerberus, after actually reaching 350 million ISK apparently on a day, now is recovering back to probably slightly less than average price, but 200 million was the low point, and we're nowhere near that. 257 million for the sellers, 239 for the buyers is a normal price, maybe slightly below average for the Cerberus. The Crow, after a bit of an increase in price here to 35, landing now at around 30, I think. 31 for the sellers, 27 for the buyers. I'd be pretty hesitant to still make a move on this one. The Guardian, also under pressure at the tail end, but staying above 230 million ISK. Yeah, 238 for the sellers, 220 for the buyers. 220 for the buyers, well, it's okay if you really want to make that investment, but I would wait for a better chart to make a move on this. Heretic, same thing, nice spike here in December. Recovering, but nowhere near the low points of 60 million. Yeah, that's still a no. The Hound, slow recovery towards 30 million X, so 29.7 million for the sellers, 26 million for the buyers. As you know, on this slow period here, I managed to grab a couple for less than 25 million ISK. Those times are over. So this is for the Hound, and I think for usually the frigates will be the ones that are most closely related to the materials, because they're the smallest and so they're the easiest to make, and they'll move more quickly, I think, with the materials. We've got the same pattern here with the low point a bit after October, November, a bit after the low point of the minerals, the materials, and then we get this recovery towards an average price, still a bit below that, but definitely nowhere near the buy opportunities anymore. For the Ishtar, same thing here, right? November, low point, and then we've got this recovery at the tail end, a little bit of pressure, but yeah, 256 million for the sellers, 242 million for the buyers of the Ishtar is a normal price for the ship. The Manticore, actually, 1 year low point, that becomes interesting. The Manticore breaking 30 million on the chart, selling for 30 million, buyers coming in at 26 million. Let's take a quick look at my ticker. Manticore bought for less than 28 million. You can buy them even more cheaply. That is definitely, in my opinion, a pronounced buy opportunity. 1 year low point on the chart. Lack of buyers at like 30 million, close to these sellers. Yeah, that's a great time to grab some cheap Manticores. Look at the potentials here. 35, 40 million on good times is definitely possible. So absolutely, that's the one that I would make my move on. I think I will, in fact, once I make my way to Jeddah. The Munin under pressure as well. Again, look at these low points. That is not so bad. It's not the absolute low point of 200 million, but selling for 226. Buyers coming in at less than 210 million ISK. It's something to keep in mind that the Munin is also part of the Imperium doctrines. At least it was like a couple of months ago when someone asked me to add it. So this is an interesting chart to perhaps try to grab a Munin as well. The Nemesis going down to a 1 year low point as well. So very pronounced here. 23 million for the sellers. My purchase was at 24.5 million. So here you do have another opportunity to grab very cheap Nemesis stealth bombers. Nemesis, Manticore, quite interesting. Could lower my averages there. I think that I might do that. The Onero's flat at 200 million ISK here, so that's not a low point, and that's again a bit below average, but nothing too special. For the Purifier, we see the pressure as well. We went as low as 26.5 before. Sellers are coming in at 28.4, buyers at 26.5 at that low point as well. So for your consideration this week, stealth bombers, Purifier, Nemesis, and Manticore, I think, are in buy order territory. The Sabre is staying flat now at 70 million ISK, so I put up a buy order for a Sabre, I think, at less than 65. It's 65.6, so I'm definitely keeping that one. There's quite a few people trying to grab them, but right now still pretty low, with potentially a Sabre buy due to one of my orders, but yeah, need quite a bit of luck here for that to actually trigger. The Scimitar also under pressure after a little bit of a spike here. We know that 200 million is possible to on the buyers, so this one is definitely not as popular. That's the bad news here. The volumes 50 or less than that a day is not great. 217 million for the sellers, 206 million for the buyers. It's pretty low on this chart, but it's not at the low point just yet, so I definitely prefer the Manticore over that right now. And then finally we get the Stiletto that is recovering from a couple of weeks at 27 million on average, back to 31 for the sellers and 29 for the buyers. So yep, take two ships. Most of them you do see that pattern show up, especially here the Ishtar is very pronounced. You get that same bottom as what we saw in a lot of advanced mode materials, and then that recovery, bit of pressure at the tail end. But Manticore, that is huge actually. In fact, breaking the 5-day moving average, breaking 30 million. Haven't seen that in the whole year. I think that's huge. Nemesis, 1 year a low point as well, breaking 25 million on the chart. That is pretty important. And then the Purifier, but very close to the 1 year low points that we've had twice before since October apparently. So yeah, very, very interesting. And then look at the spikes here. That's an awesome trade, right? Buy these for 28 million, sell at 40, go back down all of a sudden, back down to 26.5 as well, and then wait for that 35 to 40 million to materialize again. And here it is, 34 million, not bad. Very quick trade to be made there as well. The stealth bombers, I personally do like them for their volatility and accessibility. It is a frigate after all. Next up, we have the Tech 3 ships coming in at 38.40. Okay, let's go over these. Confessor, a bit of pressure at the tail end, but staying at, well, slightly below average price if you count the first half of the year. Probably for the whole year, we're on the average price at the moment. 38.5 million for the sellers, 35.6 million for the buyers. And looking at the volumes, we see nothing too crazy. Hecate landing at 40 million ISK again for the whole year. We're around the average at the moment. 40.7 million for the sellers, 36.8 million. Bit of a margin there, but looking at the volumes, again, nothing too crazy. Then we've got the Jackdaw that actually was under pressure a little bit and working its way back towards 40 million ISK. 42 million now for the sellers, exactly 36 million. Quite a nice margin, but again, looking at the volumes, nothing too crazy. We can expect 40 million, which is also the average for the year. That's where the tactical destroyers are at. And then the Zwepel, the least popular one, is trying to get back towards 40 million, actually almost succeeding here on this chart. Lack of supply, 39 million for the sellers, 37 million for the first buyer as well. Basically, drying up is what's happening with the Zwepel market, which is a bit of a surprise. Usually what we're afraid of in the Tech 3 market is oversupply, but definitely in the destroyers that is not happening at the moment. Then we've got the cruisers with the Legion, a bit of pressure, but also closing the year here at around an average price with quite a bit of volatility, of course, starting at the rework of the ships. That happened, I think, early last year. 170 million for the sellers, 169 actually, and 158 for the buyers. And again, looking at the volumes, this is, towards the low end. This is doable, nothing too crazy. Loki also, pretty damn average at the moment, selling for 223, buyers at 207, 27 here, but the rest nothing too dramatic either. And then we've got the Proteus, an above average price at the moment. I think that's actually good news because it is the least popular strategic cruiser at the moment. 173 for the sellers, 160 for the buyers, and volumes, well, there's some availability. And I think that this is normal, just like with this Zwepel and the Proteus, least popular, bit less of that being produced. And then finally we have the Tengu that did go up in price now to an above average price. 200 million on the chart, but it's 192 for the sellers, 179 for the buyers, and despite that we don't have crazy volumes. I think that this gap will probably get plugged with some extra production, but you don't really see where they've got that room at the moment. So the Tech 3 market, after I think a difficult summer with lots of overproduction on the horizon, is now at around average, except for the Tengu that's above average, and supplied, well, nothing too major, perhaps even slightly undersupplied compared to what we saw through the summer, but definitely ready for that stable average price at the moment. Too late, unfortunately, for our investments if that's what we're looking to do in the Tech 3 ships. And then for the extra product this week, we are going to take a look at the faction cruisers because I got a request for the Gila. I can understand it, right? It's like the PvE ship for Heisig at the moment, and so the request was probably to put it on the roster for a regular check, but it's the faction cruisers. I would need to start doing a whole extra segment, and at the moment I want to keep Eve Talk to less than an hour, just for myself as well. It's actually a decent amount of effort for me to keep talking for an hour straight, so yeah, it's gonna be the extra product. Know that I do regularly take a look at faction ships because those are actually quite interesting for trading, and so this week it's gonna be the faction cruisers coming in at 42.50. Let's write that down, and then let's go for ships, cruisers, faction cruisers. We'll start with the pirate factions because the request was for the Gila. So here is the Ashimu, definitely below average for the year here, landing at around 60 million, 66 million for the sellers, but less than that for the buyers, less than 60 million for the buyers. Definitely at the low end, I would say, yeah, you could consider buying some Ashimu and wait for the increased price. No, one thing though, for the pirate factions, I think it's Nosek related, right? Who owns what type of space, which determines how many BPCs and things like that come to the market. It's very difficult to say that we're gonna get twitch trading or very obvious changes in these prices. You might be stuck with these ships for a much longer time. Cinnabon trying to go to less than 150. Currently 153 for the sellers, 142 for the buyers. 142 for the buyers is definitely at the lower end as well. Bring that price to a less than average price at the moment. Next up, we've got the Ortrus. That's around average, I would say. 206 million for the sellers, 193 for the buyers. Much narrower margin here. That's around average. The Phantasm definitely at the low end as well. Coming off of like 90 million ISK, 97 for the sellers and 88 million for the buyers. Yeah, you're buying Phantasm for less than 90 million. I think if you look at this entire chart, that is pretty damn great. Then we've got the Stradios. That's definitely below average as well. Are we playing with 160? Yeah, 155 for the buyers and 169 million for the sellers. Those are some cheap damn Stradios at the moment. And then we've got the Gila. That is the request, is actually under pressure. 1 year low point, not yet. We've got 200 million here. I think before June, that's going to be the Abyss, right, where its popularity increasing its volatility. That is very interesting. Currently selling for 228, buyers at 210. Well, let's say that it is close to the cheapest price the Gila has been since the introduction of the Abyss, where it reigns supreme at the moment. So definitely quite interesting. Try to grab a couple, and very interesting as well to see this volatility here in June, introduction of the Abyss, and I think here we've got updates or something like that as well, bring that price up to 330 million ISK. Some nice volatility, but right now in the last month the pressure is on the Gila. For the Vigilant, we've got an around average price, I would say, 228 for the sellers, 212 for the buyers. So yeah, lots of these pirate faction battleships are actually under pressure. Look at the Stradios, that's pretty damn low. Phantasm is low. Ashimu is pretty low as well. The Gila under pressure, not at a 1 year low point just yet. I think because of its unique use at the moment. Then the Navy faction cruisers, let's take a look at those. Here is the Augur Navy issue. At the lower end of its trade at the moment with 75 million, 73 actually for the sellers, 64 for the buyers. You can see the lack of availability is quite obvious. So it looks to me like a more LP is expensive at the moment, which should mean that Minmatar is winning out if this correlation still holds true at the moment, but definitely trading pretty high and above average. Caracal Navy issue, going for a 1 year high point at 100 million ISK. Look at the lack of availability, 101 million for the sellers, 72.5. That's a very nice margin between these two, between buyers and sellers. But if you can sell them now, that's a great price. 1 year high point, volumes crashing down, should mean that Caldari are also losing out. And then we get the Executor Navy issue, which is Galente, is below its average at the lower end of its range. Sellers coming in at 58 million. Look at the availability right here. Buyers 1 at 50, the rest at 45. That's definitely the very low end of the range. We've got the Omen, so that should be a Mar going up in price to an above average, 75 million. Yeah, again, availability not there anymore, 77 for the sellers, 63 for the buyers. So that's expensive LP. And I've got the Osprey, that's also Caldari, expensive LP as well, above 80 million, definitely above average here, 85 million in fact for the sellers, 76 for the buyers. And then we've got the Sight, which is Minmatar, is, look at the average, 60 million here in the first half of the year. So obviously these guys are pretty cheap in LP, so winning out normally, getting lots of supplies and under pressure at the tail end as well. Let's see, buyers at less than 50 million ISK, and sellers in fact at 53 million. The chart doesn't show it that well, but it's actually definitely a below average price. The Stabber fleet issue, same thing, working its way towards a 1 year low point in fact, with 44 million for the sellers, 42 million for the buyers. If you're looking for the investments, these volumes are not crazy either. I would say, yeah, try to grab some Stabbers here, because that is pretty damn cheap. And then Vexor Navy issue, well, also cheap. Galente LP, so that's a slow down trend here towards 50 million ISK. Buyers coming in at 50, sellers at 54 million ISK. Yeah, Minmatar here, the Stabber to me is the most pronounced one, but we've got definitely currently cheap LP from Galente, Minmatar, very expensive LP for Caldari and Amar. So if you have them, you can sell those Caldari and Amar ships. And if you want to make those investments, it's time to look into some Galente and Minmatar ships. And I keep an eye on that faction warfare. If Caldari and Minmatar manage to stage a comeback, then you know that you'll have a sell opportunity on your hands as well with those ships. So this is always a very interesting facet of the game. I think the Navy faction items and ships compared to faction warfare, I've said, I have that ambition to try and make that like a more regular part of just my videos, not really Eve Talk, but that would mean that I need some alts, need to get into faction warfare, and that takes some actual dedication, a real plan to make that happen. It's something that I want to do. I'm not sure when I will do that, but it's something that I keep coming back and that I keep playing with. Think about what would be the best way to do that? What would I need to do in order to make that happen? Because I do think it's massively interesting and potentially massively profitable as well. And there you go, guys. That's it for this final Eve Talk of the year. Enjoy the holidays, and as always, I'll see you guys next time.